Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Classics of Western Spirituality series. I'm Michael Snellen. If you haven't heard of me already, I host the podcast on the Catholicism for the Modern World channel. I'm active across all of social media as well. So earlier today, I just got done with the first monastic lessons group. So that's my plan to revive Western monasticism. It's a very, very simple idea. One of the older monks asked me what it is that brings young people into the Catholic Church, myself being a recent convert of about 6 months now. So I was baptized, confirmed 6 months ago in November. I was, of course, a Christian before then. It took me about a year and a half to actually enter the Catholic Church, but that's a story for another day. What I told this monk was that I had no idea. That's still true. I don't know what it is that brings young people into the Catholic Church. In particular, the grace of God would be the best answer, of course. I'm not sure if there's a more definitive answer for people who are who want that question answered. The monasteries, of course, are losing vocations. People don't know about the monastic life. They're not exposed to Christian culture. They have little idea of what it actually is. So therefore, they do not pursue those vocational callings. And that is, I guess, being influenced by friendship, connection, networking, all these things coming from the groups I started going to in the city probably last Christmas. How these really helped me in my own life. I've met tons of people who have mentored and assisted me. So about 2 weeks after he asked me that, I thought a group would be good for the monastery to have, to just it would be attractive to a lot of people because there's already no communities or groups in the area, at least not Catholic ones. I live in a rural area. The monastery is the oldest operating monastery in North America, I think. The records on that are somewhat lost. There is a group in Canada that claims they were the first. But, as I heard from one of the monks, this monastery, the Abbey of Gethsemane, actually, though the Trappist monks arrived in America later, these Canadian monks, they started working on their monastery quicker. Or maybe not quicker, but they started working on it and they finished it quicker, that's it. Yeah, the truth is lost to time. So you can definitely say oldest operating monastery, and that's a fact. Of course, you have the Cistercian influence. The Trappists split off from the Cistercians. The Cistercians, of course, being the order of Saint Benedict, or not Saint Benedict, Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, the Frenchman, the great French monk, who we will get to in about 4 books from now. We'll take a quick detour. We'll read this book. It'll probably take us a bit, but it'll be worth it. Monastic Writings of the 12th Century. And this will, it'll of course have spiritual material for us, but it'll provide the basis for the time period. And that'll be really important, because then we'll be able to understand these saints better, namely Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. We'll be reading his selected works, so you'll get a lot of him in many different situations, his homilies, his letters, his other works. We'll do this one first, though. St. Francis and St. Clare. I've heard St. Francis called, out of all the saints, the saint who most closely imitated the life of Christ. Out of every saint, he was the saint that perfected his life in such a way as to almost be indistinguishable from Christ. I think when he died, he went to heaven, and this is a folk legend, of course. But one of the angels mistook him for being Christ, Jesus Christ, just because he so closely resembled him in his life. But yes, so going to wrap things back up. Well, quickly I'll tell the story about how the group went. So yeah, that's kind of my plan in my own personal life, to make an impact, such as Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. The monks will always correct me when I say Saint Bernard. I think that's the American pronunciation, but in the French people, they say Saint Bernard, and that's what the monks say. But yeah, Saint Bernard of Clairvaux and Saint Francis of Assisi, they both reformed the church and built it up in different ways. So that's kind of why we're starting with these two saints. And I think this group, though it was only 15 people this time, which was kind of my fault that there wasn't more, because I didn't reach out to all the local parishes as I should have. I was too busy with other things the last week. But I think this next time, if I put the idea out there, I think it's really an interesting story. So news, media, they might pick it up and interview me even. So if you give me the mic, I'll proclaim the greatness of God. It's really God that works through me. Me being an introvert, of course, sort of assuming more of an extroverted personality just in the last few months, really just doing this type of work. So yes, I do expect 100 people next month for this monthly meeting. But today went well. The monk gave a 15-minute talk, and then it was about his own life. And then all the people asked questions. All of the people were shy, of course. I had to ask the most questions. Being a podcast host, I think it comes more naturally just to think of questions on the spot and keep the conversation going, of course. Vespers was after, so that was very good to hear the monks pray, to pray the Psalms. Those are very important, as we'll learn just how important the Psalms are. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to trace, like, we'll have a focus on the monastic writers, I think, with this series, as a lot of these books are by monks or nuns. There's also some mystics. You have people like St. Augustine, St. Athanasius as well. There is these other books like Angelic Spirituality. You have just an analysis of angels, like from the people in the medieval ages. We'll see what they thought about angels. There's another one. Oh, I'm going to fall out my chair here. But here we are. Apocalyptic Spirituality. You have some of these writings, of course, which you can't even find on the internet. The treatise and letters of Lactantius. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the other half of these guys. Joachim of Flore. And then you have some Franciscans. And that's that guy who was... there's that statue of him. Savonarola. I forget exactly what he did. He was killed, I think, burned at stake. But I'm not going to say any more than that because I don't know for sure. He's very controversial figure. I know people claim that the Catholic Church executed him unfairly. And I shouldn't even say Catholic Church because it was the Catholic governments. People always get the two confused. So yes, this will be a really interesting journey. There's about 30 of these books. If we can finish 1 to 2 a week, some of them are longer than others. Some of them I can finish probably 2 hours, but a lot of these writers, I don't even know who they are yet. That'll be the interesting thing about this series. I'll learn on the go. You have people like Pseudo Macarius. Not many people know about him. There are writings from John of Avila. Of course, people heard the name, but they've never actually read those writings. Not many people have read these writings. So that's the great thing about this series. It puts a lot of these works out there into the public, and it's a recent series. I think in the last 20 years it was released by Paulus Press. After we get done with these, we'll probably continue this journey going back to like some of the ancient Christian writers. They also have a good series for them, as you can see there in the back, that blue book series. I think I'll continue doing this. It'll be an interesting all these talks, all of my progression through all these books. I need to read more. So you'll see my development as I grow smarter just by reading these. And I think we'll all take away lots of lessons, lots of knowledge. We'll learn a ton. And it will be helpful in our own lives. That's why we're kind of starting with the more spiritual writers rather than, say, I'm pointing the wrong direction there. Those are the fathers, those top 2 series. Rather than start with them and being exposed like some history or theology, which are great things, of course, you really can't grasp them fully and see their beauty until you truly know God and are working to be a saint in your own life. So that's hopefully what we'll take away from all of these writers, who are most of them saints, not all of them. Most of them are from the medieval ages too, and a lot of them are later saints from about the 1400s. A lot are from the 1300s and 1200s. But you have people as early as Saint Athanasius and as late as someone like Ignatius of Loyola. Have quite an interesting library. I want to read all of it. We'll figure out how we'll progress through it. That ancient Christian writers will probably take us 6 months or so we'll do that the later half of the year. Maybe we can get done with this series by summer. And those blue books down there, those wouldn't take terribly too long. I think you can get those done in a month. And that'll provide a better basis before we jump straight into the fathers. And we'll go right from the beginning. St. Ignatius of Antioch, pretty much. St. Pope Clement of Rome. People like them, the very first Christians. Direct descendants of the disciples of the apostles, more aptly. And some of them were even mentioned in the Bible, though they don't have their own writings in the Bible. Clement of Rome, of course. Linus, he never wrote anything, but he was the second pope. And he's talked about in some of these writings. Eusebius, we'll probably start with Eusebius before we get into the fathers, because he was the first Christian historian. coming in at about the time of the Council of Nicaea 325. We also have at our disposal here some more interesting books. Let me grab one here for you. Apologies. So this book, you cannot find it on the internet. I don't believe a PDF exists. You can buy it, of course. It costs probably $50, but this is the biography of Saint Peter Canisius, and I probably mispronounced that last name. But he was just a doctor of the church. I am 95% sure. Well, the interesting thing about this book is it tells his entire life while also including his writings at the time he wrote them. So it's a very large book. Yeah, it includes those writings at the time of his life. So if you're reading like his early, about his early not his early childhood, that's a little bit too early, but about his 20s, I guess, you'll see those writings from that time period. And so you can kind of see how his life progressed. The actual story is very interesting just because it talks about the history of the Protestant Revolution era. I use the term revolution, of course, on purpose. It was a revolution against the established Christendom order. So yeah, there's lots of the history in here, the deep history. And just so if you jump in with one guy like this, you can learn about the entire time period. There's other books, of course. So this guy, I don't even know his first name. Benvenuto Cellini. So he was a painter, I believe. We'll just say artist, but he was like commissioned by the Pope, by the Church, and he did his work during the Renaissance period. So just by reading this book, you'll learn a lot about what it was like to live during that time, but our interest would be in learning about the church during that time. There was another book I was going to mention. So we also, in my other room there, I have a lot of history books, so we'll use those when we need to. We'll use those to establish things. I got a great book about the fall of Christendom, it's called, but it's really about the Protestant Revolution period. So even though that's like 500 pages, it might be worthwhile to read. And I think just me sitting down to do these videos, it's a commitment that forces me to read. So if I was to try to do all this on my own, just at my own leisure, I would finish a book a month, pretty much. 2 books a month if I was very adamant about sticking to my routine. So I'm going to try to do this every single night. Just spend about an hour or two. And that can go a long way. Maybe by next Christmas I'll run out of books to read and then have to spend all of my Christmas allowance on books. I think this will really form us well in the Christian faith. We'll grow together. We'll have live streams together. If I can get things to work out, we'll do live readings and you can ask me questions on the go. Those would be still rare because answering questions, of course, does take time. And it's already going to take a bit of time because if you didn't read in the description already, I guess the Patreon description, that I'll be providing my thoughts as we progress. So it's a bit, you're hearing my commentary for what it's worth as we read these books. So it won't just be reading, of course, which is kind of boring. Um, you can listen to an audiobook if you want that, but it'll kind of help it'll help it stick with us all. I think, even especially me, but you as well, because um, back in the day, that's what they did. People would read books aloud, and they would talk about the books. Um, you wouldn't just have a man go into his room and read silently, not really taking into account the opinions or beliefs of others about that book. That's really one of the most important things about reading. And you'll kind of see that with this series, since all these people are connected in different ways. You'll see how they'll reference books. There will be certain people who stand out. St. Francis and St. Bernard, of course, will be mentioned many times. So that's kind of why we're starting with these bigger guys. But after we get through Bernard, I'll probably throw in some of these mystics that I have no idea about. So we'll discover them together. So yeah, I better not get any more plans about how this will go. We'll so I have the Summa back there, as you can see, the Catina by St. Thomas as well, which is just filled with commentaries on the Gospel. That would be an interesting series in and of itself, and I may do that. I may start multiple series at a time, and those can kind of progress on their own. So if you're interested in one, you can pursue that. If you're interested in another, you can follow that. Kind of keeping St. Thomas for later on purpose, though, because he's the synthesis between these newer guys, which we'll read, and the fathers. So you have like people like the mystics and Francis of Assisi. They come not too long after the fathers, but the world shifted almost after the schism, and as you enter the medieval ages, getting away from the classical period of Christianity, the 7 ecumenical councils, really Saint Bernard was the last of the fathers, as he's referred to. By then, you almost all these saints and theologians, they're all influenced by the medieval mind. They've completely changed. So St. Thomas Aquinas and the scholastics, we'll read some of the other scholastics, St. Anselm, maybe a few others. I don't really have those writings at my disposal, but they synthesize the father era, the patristics is what you'd call it, and some of these newer saints. So yeah, we'll do that at the very end, and then if anyone's still around, maybe next year, depending on how quickly this goes, we can read that Great Books of the Western World series. So that goes all the way from Aristotle to the Enlightenment philosophers, of course, as people from the 1800s, like some of the fiction writers, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, and philosophers such as Nietzsche. I'm pretty sure, just kind of guessing there, but I think that's where the philosophy line stops. You also have some interesting stuff like Hippocrates, who just writes about medical stuff. He was a Greek, an ancient Greek man, and then there's also like some of the first people who kind of discovered math or created it, however you prefer, like Euclid, Euclid. I'll say it like that, so it's correct. So yeah, let me take a look. You have Plotinus. You have, of course, all the philosophers, all the scientists. Newton, Darwin, even some of the other ones, the earlier ones. Plato, Aristotle. Of course, we'll see just how much of these writers we're reading were influenced by those two. Just the connection between it's the great conversation of man, the connection between ideas throughout all time periods. But yeah, by the time we read all these, we'll be able to fill in the gaps. So there's a huge, I cannot point in the right direction, right there, between Augustine and Aquinas, you have this gap. So for about like 800 years, you have no books. And we'll be reading those books. We'll be reading what the medieval people put out, all these great Christian writers and saints. Many of these, of course, just being some of the greatest writers of all time, but the writer, I guess, trying to make his series more general. He just didn't include them, which is a shame. There's really a lot of great stuff out there he could have included. So yes, there's lots of books we'll be going through. Some of you may have already heard about these or read them, so you can skip those if you like, or tune in just for my thoughts. Feel free to provide any recommendations as we go along. Always feel free to give your thoughts. I'm glad anyone that is listening is joining me in this journey. I've been thinking about doing this for a while, but just now getting around to it, and so I'll have these coming out pretty much on a daily basis, maybe even 2 to 3 hours if I really start to enjoy it. The footage just per day. And then I don't know if I'll make smaller videos for this channel, since I'm already making those for my many YouTube channels. Of course, the links will be in the description. Most of you already know about those, though. The Catholicism for the Modern World Network. Me and other people making videos. Of course, there's always the podcast, which takes up a large bit of my time. Interviewing some of the biggest Catholic names out there. And that's a pretty new podcast as well. Definitely check that out. I shouldn't have said new, because by the time some of these people who are purchasing this Patreon a year from now, the podcast will be old news by then. So yes, I hope this all of this content I'm making will be timeless in a sense. You'll hear my thoughts, me in the year 2023. I had to think about the year for a second. I don't pay much attention to it. You'll hear what I thought about all of these books, all of these ideas. And so hopefully by the end of it, I'll have some, I won't say profound, not sound arrogant, but hopefully I'll have some insights, just putting it all together. And that's really the special thing about reading books. You read other people's ideas, and you implement those in your own life. So yeah, I think that about does it. I'll also mention quickly that there will be articles on this Patreon page. These will be kind of private articles, of course. Not private in the sense that I wouldn't mind you if you shared them. Yes, I'll try to make them more special, oriented just for this group, rather than like a general audience that I would be writing to on Medium. So these will be, I'm bringing back admonishments. We'll see how popular those used to be, but just like telling people to stop doing things that are bad for them, like if you notice, I don't have a TV in this apartment, so I'll probably write an article about why you should get rid of your TV, or at least cut down on it to like an hour or two a week. And just having a sense of silence and order, and doing more edifying things like reading, um, listening to this if you call it edifying. But there's so much better things to do, and honestly, I don't have the time to watch TV. Pretty much running this company, which is, I don't want to say on the verge because that would make this video age badly, but it'll be a non-profit company here soon. We plan to open a bookstore, in all honesty, about, I don't want to give an estimate because then I'm just messing myself up here, but 3 months from now, we'll say. So definitely your support helps tremendously in helping all of our causes, all of the Catholicism for the modern world causes, whether it be our Catholicism for Children's channel, which is trying to provide good content for the younger audience. There isn't much of it. There is a sacred music branch where we are putting all these people together. There are composers out there who don't have much attention. There are great musicians, great singers, and we are putting all these people together and hopefully trying to bring sacred music more exposure, but we're also trying to put out new music. So it'd be great to produce a few records here and there. There's dozens of other channels. The Pray With Us channel, which is just people praying. We have some reaction channels, which are just the more casual videos of reacting to things. The podcast, of course. We are starting up a few more. We're going to start a radio channel, which is going to have that old school radio feel to it. You'll have kind of, I guess, like all the different radio shows. Like, we'll implement those in a Catholic manner, and I don't want to spoil that, but definitely keep on the lookout for that, I'll say. Definitely check out our website and read all of our articles. This entire operation started out as a writing business on Medium.com last April the 6th of 2022. I, at a whim, just started a Catholic group of writers, and 3 weeks after that, it was at a total of 60 writers due to my advertising efforts and going out and reaching people, bringing them in, and organizing them all together. And so we made together the biggest Catholic publication on Medium.com, which is one of the biggest blogging sites in the world, one of the biggest websites in the world, really, like the 50th biggest website in terms of viewers, monthly viewers. That's my ability right there. I'm not a great musician, but I'm a great conductor or orchestrator. I know how to organize things, put them together, connect them. But yeah, that's really off topic for this video. I guess the best way to wrap this up is to say that your support along this journey, and I hope I'm making it worthwhile for you. I hope you're getting things out of it, and implementing those in your own life, and hopefully you'll go out there and help build up the church, because I'm trying to do as much as I can, but I can't do it all. So the best way to do that is just to inspire other people. There's already tons of people that are assisting me, and I'm trying to assist other people that I know that are out there who could use help. yeah, just the entire Catholic world needs to come together. That's the beauty of the Catholic Church. Um, some of these outside groups or peoples, they don't have the universality. I mispronounced that word. I'm not going to try to pronounce it correctly. The universalness of the Catholic faith, and that's what the word Catholic means, of course, universal. They don't have this, but the Catholics do. So if they would only realize that and use that to their advantage, they would have this cohesive organization that can do good in the world. And they've had that at certain periods of the church's existence. But it's sort of lacking nowadays. And hopefully that's my goal with this entire nonprofit, is to kind of unify as many people as I can, sponsor as many artists and people of talent out there, and yeah, just build up the church as Francis of Assisi did. And as you do that, you are building up your own soul. So that's it's really a rewarding life. I enjoy it. It's very fulfilling. You're doing God's work, and God definitely assists with that. If you're turning from sin and pursuing a life of holiness, it's a very easy life. Living in a life of sin and pursuing your temptations is a very difficult life because God does not will that. So if you follow God's will, everything becomes easy. So yes, hopefully we all become saints. God bless you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.